I had our son misrepresent the truth to win the divorce. Now Jason has 20 acres, $1 million home, and wants nothing to do with us. Yeah, that's how it played out. Am I proud? No. Would I do it again? Probably. I'm Erica, 41, and this is how chasing a better life turned into watching my ex live everything I thought I deserved without us. About 5 years ago, I was married to Jason. He was a paramedic in our small, beige town outside Cincinnati. A solid guy, sure, but painfully boring. We had a modest two-bedroom with beige everything. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige dreams. Our son Liam was 8, and our routine was as stale as the reheated leftovers we lived on. Jason worked night shifts and double weekends, always coming home drained, smelling like sweat and antiseptic. Meanwhile, my world felt like it was shrinking. Every scroll through Instagram made it worse. Friends drinking cocktails in Santorini while I cut coupons at the kitchen table under flickering lights. And then one Saturday, at a local animal shelter fundraiser, I met Caleb. Caleb was a plastic surgeon from the city, button-down shirt, Rolex, teeth so white they looked photoshopped in real life. He complimented my scarf, laughed too long at my jokes, and made a generous donation in my name. He had this glow about him, like he lived above all the day-to-day struggle. He started showing up more, bringing his dog by for checkups, asking if I was volunteering next weekend, brushing my arm casually. I wasn't naive. I saw what was happening. I started dressing up again, no more oversized sweatshirts or skipping makeup. I got Botox for the first time. Learned how to do beachy waves from a YouTube tutorial. Jason didn't notice. He was too busy passing out on the couch mid-sentence or ranting about burnout at the station. But Caleb noticed. "You look incredible." Erica became the highlight of my week. The more I saw him, the more resentful I became of my life. I started picking fights over nothing. Why Jason left his boots in the hallway. Why he forgot to bring milk. The truth was, I wanted out. I wanted Caleb. I wanted dinners at steakhouses and weekend getaways. I wanted a man who saw me. But Jason annoyingly was careful with money. Despite a modest salary, he had retirement accounts, emergency savings, even some investments. Around $275,000 saved. I'd been with him since we were kids. I'd earned a piece of that. I knew he'd fight for it, especially since I was the one initiating the divorce. That's when I started working on Liam. I know how it sounds, but I didn't make him lie. I just reshaped the story. I began by pointing out how Jason missed every school play, every parent-teacher night. "I guess saving lives is more important than your son's recital," I'd whisper when Liam cried. I forgot to remind Jason about events until it was too late to switch shifts. I'd comfort Liam while making sure he knew who the villain was. When Jason and I argued, I made sure Liam overheard only my side. I'd sob about how alone I felt, how Jason never helped, how tired I was of doing everything myself. Kids want to protect their moms. Liam was no exception. Slowly, he started to see his dad the way I needed him to, as the distant, selfish parent who only showed up when it was convenient. Then I learned that in divorce court, a child's perspective could seriously influence custody and finances. I never told Liam to lie, but I reminded him of moments when Jason raised his voice, even if it only happened once. That was scary, wasn't it? I'd ask over and over, until it felt like it had happened all the time. I implied that Jason's temper was abnormal, that maybe his stress made him unsafe. By the time we went to court, Liam genuinely believed Jason was a negligent, borderline abusive father. He told the judge everything I needed him to, and I didn't feel guilty. I saw it as taking back what I was owed after wasting over a decade on a man who never tried to give me the life I wanted. Besides, Caleb was starting to talk about our future. I had to log this down before he got bored. The problem? Jason wasn't the fool I thought he was. Turns out, he'd been quietly recording our interactions for months. Nothing obsessive, just the ones where things got tense. Calm, time-stamped footage that showed me picking fights and manipulating. Liam, the judge, didn't throw the book at me, but I lost custody, and with it, my leverage. Jason walked away with the land we bought together, most of the savings, and ironically the freedom I wanted for myself. Caleb ghosted me 2 weeks later. Now I'm in a condo I can barely afford, trying to rebuild a relationship with a son who doesn't trust me. Jason, he just bought a boat. I had no idea Jason had been recording me until everything started falling apart in court. The day we were set to discuss custody, I walked in wearing my best blazer and fake confidence. I'd rehearsed with Liam the night before, just enough to make Jason sound unstable, maybe unfit for shared custody. Nothing wild, just a few concerns about his temper, how he slammed doors or raised his voice. Liam was anxious, but I reassured him, "This is how we get the house, baby. This is how we stay safe. Just talk about how it felt when he yelled, okay?" I whispered as they called him in. The judge nodded sympathetically as Liam described how his dad would get angry and make the house feel scary. Then Jason's attorney stood up and calmly asked the court to admit new evidence. I didn't blink until they played it. Footage from our own living room. Not some edited hit piece, just raw, damning video. Me yelling, Jason staying composed. Me muttering to Liam, "Daddy's just pretending to care. He doesn't really want to be there." When Jason called to say he'd been held late on a rescue call, dinners got cancelled. By the time COVID rolled around, he'd quietly started dating one of the newer nurses at his practice, a 27-year-old with Invisalign and no baggage. Jason? He vanished, sold his gear, listed the condo, and started working paramedic contracts across the country, first in New York, then Texas. Then I stopped checking. He never called Liam, never sent a birthday card. He just disappeared, took the money, took his freedom, and left me with the mess. I told myself it was better this way, that Liam and I would build something new, that I'd find someone better, someone who didn't walk away. But I'd be lying if I said those first few months weren't brutal. Liam kept asking about his dad. Why didn't Liam's dad want to see him? Why did we have to say those things in court? I tried to deflect as best I could, but kids aren't stupid. He knew something didn't add up. The worst part was watching Jason's condo sell for way more than I ever imagined. The housing market exploded, and he walked away with a hefty profit that I couldn't touch. My lawyer told me flat out nothing to be done. The settlement was airtight, and I should be grateful I wasn't facing worse consequences. Sometimes I'd drive past his old place, the beige townhouse, near the train tracks, and see a new family unloading patio furniture or planting mums in the front yard. I'd sit there gripping the steering wheel, staring at the life that should have been mine. That was supposed to be my clean slate. Instead, I was stuck, barely scraping together mortgage payments on a house that smelled like takeout and regret. Then the pandemic hit. Everything unraveled faster than I could keep up with. I lost my job managing a small chain store at the strip mall. Liam's school shut down, and I was suddenly expected to be his teacher, tech support, and full-time mom, all while watching our savings dwindle. Meanwhile, I kept hearing from mutual acquaintances that paramedics working interstate contracts were making bank hazard pay bonuses, signing deals in hot zones like Denver and Houston. Jason was one of them, apparently. While I was budgeting for instant noodles and begging the electric company for one more extension, he was getting rich off disaster. For nearly 3 years, Jason vanished. No birthday calls for Liam, no support payments, no Christmas texts. I told myself he was a coward, that we didn't need him, but the silence was heavy, especially for Liam, who never said it out loud but kept checking the mailbox anyway. I dated occasionally, but nothing stuck. Most men weren't exactly lining up to take on a 40-something mom with financial baggage, a messy divorce, and a teenage son who'd started pulling away. Late one night last fall, I was scrolling through Facebook, just trying to fall asleep, when I saw a post that stopped me cold. A mutual friend had tagged Jason in a photo. There he was, standing on a dock somewhere, tan and smug, holding a coffee mug that said, "Work hard, retire early." The caption? "Congrats to Jason on his retirement. You earned every bit of it." I couldn't believe it. Retirement? Jason was only 44. How the hell was that even possible? I went full detective, clicking every tag, reading comments, even trying to guess passwords to our old photo account. His Facebook was mostly locked down, but there were just enough public posts to piece things together. During those travel years, Jason had been working non-stop 6 12-hour shifts a week, barely taking days off. He'd lived out of a van for a while to save on housing, barely spent anything, just stacked money like some doomsday prepper until he could buy a place outright in Idaho or Montana, somewhere with mountains, a lake, and not a single reminder of me. But that alone didn't explain the kind of wealth I was seeing in those photos. Then I stumbled on a comment thread where someone asked Jason how he managed to retire so young. His reply mentioned luck with some early crypto investments and smart moves during the market swings. From what I pieced together, he had thrown a chunk of money into Dogecoin back when it first popped up on Robinhood, then cashed out near the peak. He'd also invested in some UFC stock, whatever that was, and apparently made a killing. The photos were what really got me. His new place wasn't just nice, it was jaw-dropping. A modern house sitting on 20 acres of lakefront property, him paddleboarding on crystal clear water, sunsets from a massive deck overlooking the lake, a home office with a view straight out of a magazine. And in every single picture, he looked happier than I'd ever seen him during our marriage. That night, over a glass of wine, I showed the post to my friend Tanya. "Can you believe this?" I fumed. "He's living like a millionaire while I'm scraping together money just to fix my car." Tanya gave me that look like a friend who's about to say something you don't want to hear. "What exactly did he do to Liam?" she asked. "He abandoned him, signed away his rights, never called, never visited." "Yeah. Wasn't that the deal you wanted after all the court battles?" she pressed. I hated when she played devil's advocate. "That's not the point. The point is, he's got millions now, and some of that should be ours. Liam's his son, for God's sake." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing that house, those 20 acres, the financial security that should have been mine if everything had gone as planned. By morning, I convinced myself Jason owed us not legally, maybe, but morally. Liam deserved to benefit from his father's success, no matter what happened in the divorce. It took some digging, but I finally got Jason's address from a friend of a friend who'd been to his recent housewarming. I sat there, debating what to do next. A letter demanding support, a lawyer. I weighed my options, but in the end, I decided a direct approach was best. Liam was nearly 16 now, old enough to understand more about what had happened, old enough to choose whether he wanted a relationship with his father. I told him we were going on a road trip to visit some family. I didn't mention that the family was the father he barely remembered. The drive took nearly 6 hours. Liam kept his headphones on most of the way, clearly uninterested in the relatives we were supposedly visiting. I rehearsed what I wanted to say to Jason in my head, diplomatic, calm. I planned to appeal to his conscience about Liam, careful not to bring up money just yet. That would come later, once they'd reconnected. When we finally arrived at his property, I almost lost my nerve. The house was even more impressive in person. A sprawling modern masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows perched high on a hillside overlooking the lake. Down a winding path, a private boat dock peeked through the trees, and the landscaping looked professionally maintained. Every detail screamed wealth. I parked in the circular driveway and turned to Liam. "There's something I need to tell you," I said. "We're not here to see my cousin. We're here to see your dad." His eyes went wide. "My dad? Why didn't you tell me?" I wasn't sure how he'd react. It had been years since Jason and I had spoken, and things hadn't ended well, but he'd done very well for himself. I thought maybe it was time for them to reconnect. Liam looked confused, maybe a little angry, but also curious. He'd been asking more questions about Jason lately, wondering why he'd disappeared from our lives so completely. I saw this as my chance to rewrite the story, to paint Jason as the distant father and myself as the parent trying to bridge the gap. We walked up to the front door, and I noticed a small camera mounted near the doorbell, part of a fancy security system. I pressed the bell and heard it chime inside. My heart pounded as we waited. Finally, the door swung open, and there stood Jason, looking annoyingly fit and well-rested, like he hadn't spent years living out of a van. The recognition hit me, sharp and bitter. "Can we just talk for a minute?" I pressed, voice steadier than I felt. "A lot has happened, and Liam's older now. He deserves to know his father." Jason looked at Liam directly for the first time. "I'm sorry your mother brought you here under false pretenses," he said coolly, "but this isn't a good idea." My carefully crafted plan felt like it was unraveling. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. "Jason, be reasonable. We've seen your posts. We know you're doing well now. We thought." "I know exactly what you thought," he cut me off sharply. "Face the consequences. This is my only warning." I glanced down at the doorbell camera again. That little red light blinking. He was recording everything, just like before, protecting himself from me, from us, making us look like the villains when all we wanted was what was rightfully ours. "Mom, Let's just go, Liam said, tugging at my arm. His face was mortified, eyes glistening with tears. This was a terrible idea. In the car, the silence was deafening. I tried to explain, to justify everything that had happened, but Liam barely spoke. When we got home, he locked himself in his room. I tried calling a few friends to vent, but the responses were lukewarm at best. Most people thought I'd crossed a line showing up unannounced at Jason's house. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. Liam started asking more questions about the divorce, about what really happened in court. He found old family photos and began piecing together inconsistencies in my stories. One night, his voice trembling with hurt, he said, "That's what you did, isn't it? You turned me against him." I'd never seen him so angry, so disappointed in me. That night, he called my mother his grandmother and asked if he could stay with her for a while. He said he needed space. Space from me. News travels fast in a small town. Within days, people were whispering about our failed ambush at Jason's house and Liam moving in with my mother. Old friends stopped calling. I got awkward looks at the strip mall where I worked. Someone even left a note on my car. Liam knows the truth, and he's ashamed too. The final blow came when Liam announced he wanted to legally change his last name to drop mine and take back Jason's. "I don't want to be associated with what you did," he told me, his young face serious and determined in a way that painfully reminded me of Jason. I tried to fix things, to explain my side, but it was too late. The story had shifted. I was no longer the wronged wife struggling alone. I was the manipulative mother, the villain who ruined any chance of Liam having a relationship with his father, even if Jason was reluctant. As for Jason, his life seems to keep flourishing. Judging by the occasional social media posts friends share with me, he travels, donates to animal charities, and seems to have found some peace. Sometimes I wonder what if I'd been honest, if I'd told him I was unhappy, if we had divorced amicably, if I hadn't tried to take everything from him, would we have stayed in touch? Would he have shared some of his success with us? On rare quiet nights, I imagine a parallel universe where I didn't poison Liam against his father, where I didn't show up uninvited at Jason's door looking for a handout. A universe where I might be welcome on those 20 acres, sharing in that wealth and happiness, part of a family instead of a cautionary tale. But that universe isn't this one. In this one, I'm just the ex-wife who tried to cheat the system and lost everything.